I never thought I'd find myself here, sitting on the edge of a truth I wasn't ready for. My name is Callum. I'm 38, and I've been married to Alara for 12 years. On the surface, things seem normal. We had our routines, our inside jokes, the occasional weekend getaway. I won't lie, life wasn't always fireworks, but I believed in us. I believed in the foundation we built together, in the promises we made when we said, for better or worse. It started subtly, like a soft erosion you don't notice until it's too late. She would come home late from work more often, sometimes giving vague reasons, other times saying she was just tired. I brushed it off at first. Work stress, I told myself. It happens. But there were signs, tiny ones at first, almost laughable if you didn't feel the pit in your stomach every time you saw them. A text flashing from someone unknown, a quick phone lock whenever I entered the room, lingering calls that abruptly ended when I got near. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I thought maybe I was imagining things, or maybe my own insecurities were exaggerating harmless events. But intuition is a cruel but honest guide. The nagging feeling that something was wrong became impossible to silence. My gut screamed at me in quiet moments, when she smiled too long at her phone, when she brushed past me in a way that didn't feel accidental, when laughter that was once shared between us seemed to be stolen by someone else. One Friday evening, I caught something that broke me in ways I hadn't expected. We were on a beach trip she said was with her colleagues, some team-building event. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the sand when I saw them. Alara and a man I didn't recognize, close, too close, laughing, touching, comfortable in a way that was no longer hers to share with me. It was almost cinematic, the way they leaned into each other, oblivious to the world. My heart raced. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't shout, I didn't confront. I simply watched, frozen in disbelief. I went home that night numb. I didn't pack, I didn't scream. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cold mug of coffee, and tried to make sense of it. Was it real? Was I overreacting? The answer was obvious, yet painful. I wasn't. I knew in that moment that the trust we had built over more than a decade had been shattered. But what would I do next? I couldn't confront her with emotions clouding my judgment. I couldn't let anger dictate my actions. So, I made a choice. I hired a private investigator. I didn't do it out of revenge, and I certainly didn't want a public spectacle. I wanted facts. I needed clarity. The investigator was thorough. He followed discreetly, documented meetings, tracked her routines. And over the next 2 weeks, the picture became painfully clear. Alara wasn't just spending time with someone casually. There was a pattern, a consistency that left no room for doubt. She was involved with this man emotionally and physically, right under my nose. What I didn't expect was the confirmation coming in the most surreal way. The investigator called me one evening with timestamps, photos, and locations. Each image was a dagger, each report a reminder of the deception that had been hiding in plain sight. I studied them in silence, letting the weight of reality settle in. It wasn't about catching her in the act anymore. It was about acknowledging that the life I thought I had was never really mine. When I finally confronted Alara, I did it calmly. No shouting, no tears, no dramatics. I presented the evidence, laid out the facts, and watched her face change. First shock, then panic, and finally, the cold detachment of someone caught in a lie they thought they could control. She didn't try to deny it. She didn't apologize sincerely. Instead, she offered excuses, explanations that sounded rehearsed, as if she had been preparing for this moment long before I even suspected anything. I realized then that staying would have been a slow death of self-respect. I had been loyal, patient, and present, but all that mattered to her was what she wanted in the moment. And what she wanted wasn't me. It never really was. I packed a small bag, not out of anger, but out of necessity. I left our home for the first time with clarity instead of confusion. My chest felt lighter, the air sharper, as if I was finally breathing for myself again. Over the next few days, I followed a strict routine. I met with the PI to finalize his findings. I organized my finances. I planned the steps I would take to protect myself legally and emotionally. I didn't rush. I didn't lash out. I moved deliberately, and with every action, I reclaimed pieces of myself that had been quietly eroded over the years. And then came the confrontation with her friend, Mara, who had been the unwitting witness to some of Alara's actions. She approached me hesitantly, unsure how I would react. I listened to her, nothing more. She offered insight, background, things I already suspected but hadn't had confirmation for. Her words didn't change anything. I had already accepted the truth, but they reinforced my clarity. What followed was legal, structured, and unemotional. Everything that needed to be addressed, financial arrangements, living situations, shared responsibilities, was handled calmly and deliberately. I didn't pursue revenge. I didn't seek validation. I only sought what was fair, what was mine, and what protected my dignity. The most striking realization was how calm I felt amidst the chaos. There were no explosions of anger, no dramatic confrontations. There was only clarity. I had finally acknowledged that the love I once knew was gone, and that holding on would only diminish me further. Walking away wasn't a failure. It was an assertion of self-worth. In the weeks that followed, I spent time reflecting. I allowed myself to grieve the relationship, to mourn the version of my life that was never going to return. But I also allowed myself to feel relief, empowerment, and a strange sense of freedom. Life hadn't ended. It had only shifted. The betrayal didn't define me. My reaction did. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Alara and I will ever have any form of reconciliation, and frankly, I don't want to. I know now that some relationships reach their natural conclusion, no matter how much effort, love, or patience you invest. And in recognizing that truth, I finally understand the value of self-respect. Leaving wasn't about punishing her. It wasn't about proving a point to anyone else. It was about proving a point to myself, that loyalty, effort, and love deserve acknowledgement, not neglect. And when acknowledgement isn't given, walking away becomes the only rational, dignified option. The beach where I first saw them together haunts me occasionally, but not with pain anymore. Now, it serves as a reminder that awareness, action, and self-respect are far more powerful than blind hope. I live my days deliberately, intentionally, and without compromise to my core values. I don't speak of this to boast or to gain sympathy. I speak of it to document clarity, the moment when truth became unavoidable, and the moment when I chose myself over deception. That choice has changed everything. And in the stillness that follows betrayal, I finally found my peace.